Hello, welcome back. I hope you've had a good discussion with others in your group. I'm so sad that I can't be with you. I hope that there might be some questions. Please do email me if any come up. I'll give you my email address at the end. So let's now think about these magnetic points, these 5 magnetic points: cosmos, norm, salvation, existence, and power. Before we do, a brief kind of word on Bavinck, who articulated these magnetic points. He was born in the Netherlands to a German father in 1854, and later in his life he was appointed Professor of Dogmatics at Kampen Theological Seminary in the Netherlands. As I mentioned before, Bavinck found that when he was looking into cultures, that there is something he calls a universal religious consciousness, that no matter who we are, these 5 things are going to break through in different ways. So he explains the magnetic points like this, and I think I've put them on your handout. Yes, I have. Man, by virtue of his place in the world, must always and everywhere give answers to the same questions. He has to struggle with the basic problems which his existence itself entails. He is afflicted by grief and misfortune. He meets both adverse and prosperous conditions. Deep in his heart he has a vague feeling of responsibility. He has to adapt himself to the course of nature. He is aware he is only a small being in the immeasurable greatness of the universe, and he knows very well that sooner or later death will knock at his door. Wherever he goes, he is surrounded by a multitude of questions, and although he has the power to escape from them for a certain time, he cannot help being overwhelmed by them at times. His being on earth is itself such an immense riddle that it threatens to crush him. The answers to all the questions with which he has to struggle may be different, but the problems themselves are always the same, and he has to respond to them not only in his thinking and feeling, but also in his whole attitude to life, in his acts and rights, in his existence itself. His whole way of life is a response. Therefore, it stands to reason that this universal religious consciousness, with all its antagonisms and tensions, is something real and to be found wherever men live and toil. Is it possible to formulate the main points which have drawn the attention of man? Let us call them magnetic points, because they are points which demand our attention and which we cannot evade. We cannot help being confronted with them. Since they are rooted in our existence, they are stronger than ourselves, and somehow we must come to grips with them. We can define 5 such magnetic points or focal points. It is our intention to deal with each of them more elaborately later on, but here we shall confine ourselves to mentioning their names. Good old Bavinck. So these are those 5 magnetic points. So it means that I hope that looking at these 5 magnetic points, it's going to give us the confidence in knowing that whomever you speak with, whomever you ask a question to, whomever you're living your lives before, will, regardless of how sorted they seem, how prosperous they are, regardless of how well you're able to articulate a response, they will have these 5 focal points, these 5 magnetic points ingrained in them. It's just a matter of helping them to see that and to point them to Jesus, who's the ultimately attractive and magnetic person. Christ himself is in him who the answers to those questions ultimately lie. So here's the first one. Here's I and the cosmos. This is the first magnetic point, cosmos. So again, I've written these on your handout, so I'm going to go through these quite quickly. And then in discussion groups, you'll be able to think about, what does this look like? How do I see this? Maybe you see this, maybe you don't. What are potential implications? So this is the first one, I and the cosmos. Key ideas, as per the handout, are like cosmos, connection, totality, communion with the cosmic whole. And so what Bavinck is getting at here is that there's this dissonance between being an individual and being part of something bigger. Everyone knows that there's more, and so everyone replaces connection with God with something else. So what is that? What is the something else that friends, family, people groups use to satisfy that need for? So the key question here is there a way to connect? Now, you might be able to think of some examples of this. Think about music concerts, like Coldplay concerts, when you just become one, with this kind of moving whole, this mass of almost worshippers coming together in this amazing experience of music. There's a transcendence to it. Or think about sporting events, or think about nationalism or any other isms that offer this kind of connection as a way to replace God. About yoga, my friends are very much into that, and the spiritual side of that, of offering connection with our bodies, but also connection with something bigger outside of ourselves. So I wonder, what would you need to say about the gospel in response to this awareness and need for connection? One potential gospel confrontation and connection is when Jesus says, I am the vine. The gospel says we can't and we don't just melt into totality because we live under judgment and curse. We are living in a world that is perishing. It's not about losing your sense of self, but it's dying to self and finding oneself in the resurrection and kingdom of God, and within the community, the church family, his people. So what might you say in response to this awareness and need for connection? How might your church become more of an answer for that need for connection? The second one is I am the norm. So the key idea here is, sorry, that's a chapel bell, is the world isn't what it ought to be. We could have chosen otherwise, but we're bound by these values that we haven't created. There's this standard, that's the summary. So the question here is there a way to live? Is there a way to live? Is there a standard that I'm applying to my own life that tells me that if I achieve this, this is the norm. If I achieve this, then I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. So, for example, it could be dieting, it could be some kind of regulation, it could be political correctness, it could be virtue signalling, it could be risk-taking, it could be all sorts of things. So have a think about this in your group. What does the standard look like? Is there a way to live that's common in society that there might be a standard which society puts on people that says this is the norm, this is the way that you should live in order to make up for what we know isn't quite right. This is the answer, this is the way to live in response to that. Again, the gospel confrontation and connection. She says, I am the gate. That's something to think about. What does that mean? The third one is salvation. Again, key ideas here is deliverance from death, but it's also other things too. So the question here is there a way out? Is there a way out? Is there a way out from sickness, from poverty, from dependence, from the chaos that's threatening life in our community? This might be, especially now, a really pertinent question. Is there a way out? So, some examples. Is it the way culture deals with death? Could it be artificial intelligence, transhumanism, cultural definitions of success, the second life, virtual reality phenomenon? Political systems, is that the way out? Is there a way out? And here we have the gospel confrontation and connection that Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So what that might look like for you in your leadership and local churches, for you with your friends and family, to help expose and connect with this desire for a way out. The fourth one is I and the riddle of my existence. Here the key idea is the course of life is this tension between fate and action, in that we both lead, but we also undergo our lives. There's a tension between activity and passivity in our lives. Do I lead it, or am I being led by something? It's this sense of destiny. Is there a way we control? We might see this in X Factor, or is it Britain's Got Talent, or whatever it might be, that this sense of fate and freedom. What does that look like for us? And again, there might be all sorts of examples that you can think of too. And this is where, into this, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. There's divine sovereignty and human responsibility, which are both affirmed with him. So what might it look like for us to share that with our friends. And the fifth one is I and a higher power. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice. I've had this dreadful cold for a little bit, so thank you for bearing with me. The fifth one is I and a higher power. Are we being connected in some way to something ultimate, something beyond us? Is there a higher power? Is there an ultimate power in which we can ground our lives? Again, I mean, as with all of these, I've included the snippet from Babbage where he talks about it. Cultural examples could be this sense of transcendence, perhaps a dissatisfaction with the immanent frame, this longing for just something more, something that's able to kind of to reach me at my lowest point, but also take me to this kind of great height. Is there an ultimate power behind my life? Is there a way up and a way down when we're thinking about authority? To this, Jesus says in confrontation and connection, I am the light of the world. That's who he is. I just think that's staggering. We sadly don't have time to unpack that now, but consider that. How does Jesus say, I am the light of the world? Oh, how does that shape and nuance this desire for power, which we all have? It's light, it's in a person, it's Jesus. Oh, so much here. So all of these 5 magnetic points that just looked at are common points of attraction, which are embedded in humanity and can draw people to himself, draw people to Jesus. But how can we use these magnetic points to point people to the magnetic person Jesus as his magnetic people? All of these 5 magnetic points are in all of humanity, but it could be that maybe you've just seen one of those in particular in friends, in friends of people in your church family, in your own family, in people groups. It might be that you've just seen one of these points more clearly at work in the person that you had in mind at the start of the last session. So they're all 5 are present. That's 10, 5. All 5 are present, but you might find that one is a little bit more obvious, that the person is longing for, desiring. So they are the five magnetic points that we've just looked at. And what I'd love you to do in groups is not only to think about which magnetic points in particular might connect with your friends at the moment, but I'd love you to think about how you can actually go about connecting it. Again, on the handout, there's more here than we have time to do now. But this is based on Act 17. I have here just a few steps, which again is taken from the book Plugged In, which is based on Act 17, and how we can enter into a worldview and discern the gospel story, how we can explore that culture, that person, that community for elements of grace and idols, and how we can expose those as destructive frauds before going on to evangelize and show off the gospel of Christ as the one in whom we find rest, the magnetic person himself. That's a little bit on subversive fulfillment. So I think now what I'd love to do is to go into groups and to think about what do those magnetic points look like for you, for your friends, for your family, for people groups, and then what does it look like for you to respond to that in some way. Is this something do you recognise this? Is this something you see? How might this help you in your life and witness to this lost world? Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so sorry that my voice is a bit on a low ebb, but it's been a real joy today to be with you. My email address is Kristi, Kristin, @oakhill.ac.uk. So if you'd like to be in touch, I'd love that. Please send me any questions that you might have. And I hope that time now in groups will be really fruitful to think about fleshing this out a little bit more for yourself and for your context. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're having a great day, and I know that there'll be wonderful things for you to sit in and to enjoy for the rest of this afternoon. So thank you so much, and I hope I'll get to see you face to face at some point. God bless you. Take care.